Hey there, Jon Purow here with another one-hitter episode for Highly Enlightened, my podcast syndicated by Entrepreneur. Another one-hitter at the wonderful WomenGrow conference here in Maryland in 2025. And I'm here with precious Osagie-Erise. All right. And just please introduce yourself and let us know how you're connected to this wonderful industry.
Yeah.
Let's start.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.
What's up, everybody? I'm Precious Osagie-Erise. I am the founder and CEO of Precious Cannabis, which is the first Black woman-owned pre-roll brand to launch in the state of New Jersey. We've been rapidly growing there and seeing just really activating a new demographic of women who shop at dispensaries and look to find some sort of representation there. So that's really exciting. Prior to that, I supported legalization throughout New Jersey. I also worked a lot on the advocacy side, which was super passionate for me.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
As someone, who's been in New Jersey for a couple of years now and will admit it to himself in another couple of years. I'm a native New Yorker.
Okay. So we know.
But thank you for your service. This is someone who's been instrumental in pushing New Jersey forward.
I will accept that. Yes, because it definitely was a time you had to be there. Governor Murphy ran on weed and wages. Yeah. And when you blurt that so out loud, it makes you want to get involved and make sure, let's make sure that
it's done right.
Right, done right, and that there's opportunity for everyone. I also served as the senior DEI advisor for the National Cannabis Roundtable, and also served as the communications manager for Minority Cannabis Business Association. So really been around supporting just, legalization efforts, supply chain efforts to make it make sense. And opportunities for businesses to really grow and scale no matter where you are in the supply chain. And it's kind of what I've done now with my pre-roll brand.
Yes, no, exactly. And I think in WomenGrow, we've been able to see some really interesting statistics thrown out there and everything. And people, let's not forget that, the purchasing power for a lot of households, right, is held by women. And so catering to women.
In our purse strings.
Exactly. And I just think that's very, very important. So now, to ask you, right, for our one hitter, what is something that you're finding very interesting now in the industry, that you want to focus on that's jumping out at you, you'd say?
Really the state of policy. After being a business operator, I realized that all of us, big, small, medium size, we can only go but so far if the policy doesn't meet us, right? Yes. And where does that change happen? Of course, there's state-based policies that we all have to operate in within our individual states and make sure we're compliant in that way. But then also on the federal side, it's really no man's land, right? We've seen all the switch up happen with hemp. We thought there was some sort of a base there where you can use what we saw with the Farm Bill to kind of say, okay, there's been some level of federal policy that can also impact, THC businesses. And that movement is now going to switch because we are in a different, completely, political climate. And one thing that's jumping out to me is what is the real possibility of federal policy under this administration? And what are we going to do about it? Because when rubber meets the road, all of us need something. 280E is killing us. Banking, lack of it is killing us.
No, 100%.
So those things are going to be really pivotal. Access to capital markets, which I think is something that we have to talk about.
Tied to those issues.
Exactly.
And,
there's nuances. And as someone who is super passionate also about permanent reform and social justice and social equity, and how do we pair that also with the importance of being able to be sustainable as businesses is definitely a hard toe to walk, but I believe in incremental scale, period, with cannabis. But I'm really interested to see what's going to happen, if anything happens, or what we can do to make something happen on the federal level when it comes to policy.
And I'll tell you my 2 cents, my take on this, right? Is that, I think that, Biden needed the young vote, right? And so he pushed, rescheduling very, very hard while he did it. And then obviously things shifted with Kamala. And so that wasn't as much of a prerogative as we had, Trump running for president, essentially saying whatever he would say in order to accumulate votes, which is what any politician does. I'm not taking sides or anything.
He did say it. At the end, there was tweets out there, I'm going to legalize it. I'm going to
all this stuff on both ends. There is a lot of talk. And personally, I think, as you say, when the rubber hits the reefer road, right, we're not going to see progress because Biden was pushing along an unwilling DEA, right? We have Ann Milgram's quotes. And so I'm setting my expectations, right, low. Because I think that's one thing you have to do to survive in the cannabis industry, right? Lowered expectations. It's always good to be positively surprised, right? When it's not something that happens so often for us. And so like, I'm keeping my expectations about rescheduling low, especially with, the way that they've been pushing out, the hearings and everything. And I think that the next farm bill is going to be hugely important, because if, some form of psychoactive cannabinoid makes it through this farm bill, I think that's effectively federal legalization. But then you're not putting the genie back in the bottle at that point.
And I think you absolutely hit it on the head. Like, the Biden administration had a very long time to pass some sort of cannabis policy. And it wasn't from lack of effort from the industry. Like, we were in DC, we were lobbying, we were calling on the disparities that we're seeing with new small businesses, the lack of funding, the lack of access, the predatory deals, the predatory loans. And these were all real situations and real use cases that we brought to that administration. And I agree. No one should build your business model contingent on federal policy. Okay.
Yes.
You can keep it in the back of your mind and your peripheral just to be, in tune with what's going on. But don't start creating your business model contingent on the fact that legalization, rescheduling, banking, psychoactive.
Don't assume that your taxes are suddenly you're going to have that 30% profit shot in the arm.
Exactly.
Right?
Operate with what's currently happening. But I do encourage everyone to just kind of keep doing, faith is low, but we do have to keep the pressure on. We are with a new leadership that literally you're seeing some of the folks who really despise cannabis in Congress now leading a lot of policy and lawmaking in both the House and the Senate. So what's gonna really, what tune are they gonna dance to? One thing that I has found though, starts from the head. When the president gives out a new marching order, it just seems like the Republican Party is now looking to execute. No questions asked. It's just do this. So I think it'll be interesting if there's a realm of possibility, because it is a campaign promise he made.
It's true.
To do something on the legalization effort. And I just think it's about communicating. As much as a lot of us aren't liking what we're seeing. Just to keep it frank, right? Everyone, politics right now has politicized people, friendships, all of that.
We're at a conference that was rocked by something of a certain nature, and it's just, it's a heightened
time. So it's almost difficult to have conversations about where politics plays into cannabis. But I just don't want us to be afraid of it, right?
No.
Because as business operators, I'm a business operator. I'm telling you guys, the success of my business is not just going to be contingent on decisions I make. Long-term success is going to be contingent on what sort of policies fall down the pipeline from a federal standpoint and also from a state standpoint. States can do but so much. You have a state like Maryland who has, I don't know the correct term, but essentially separated 280 taxes from business operators here. These are small wins.
No, exactly. No, I say it's not legalization bit by bit. It's legalization hit by hit.
Hit by hit. So I want to encourage the industry to not feel so doom and gloom because of where we are politically and where the climate is. We are seeing other industries, start to make connection and inroads and try to push their policy and see what the agenda is. And just being super pragmatic, the former administration really had 8 years to do something for us. And we were all let down. A lot of us were there at the very end, even hoping something would be put into the continuing resolution that would fund the rest of the government up until March or something. Even something there. And honestly, we really thought we had the votes, right? Democrats could have done a little, even if I was to stick it, I'm about to stick it to you. It literally would have been a game changer. And the fact that we didn't even get that opportunity was definitely disheartening. I was there, I watched that happen. So my hope is that we are seeing rescheduling sort of held up. The DA, the new head of DA is, of course, not supportive of cannabis. So all of these are things that will make us kind of not want to have any level of optimism. But I'm just here to say we don't take the pressure off as an industry.
I don't think we take the pressure off. And that's why I think that it's really, really important, right? When we live at the margins in this industry right now, because of how tough it is with taxation and all of these other idiosyncratic issues based mostly off of federal illegality. I think that's why it's so important. I was talking about this with someone before, is that the importance of someone like you who has lived through it, coming to a newer market, right, and sitting down with the right people that we're trying to help in this industry and imparting wisdom is so important and shouldn't be discounted.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to see people win. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of people have turbulent times trying to operate in the cannabis industry because it's constrained. Like my personal story, just, self-funding, trying to find better ways to run and operate a business. There's cash flow issues that I think most cannabis businesses are experiencing because folks are having a hard time managing. So we're all kind of like wound up.
Yep.
I would say there isn't this, but I consume, so I find a way to unwind. But when you go back into the work mode, you're really feeling the pressure of just being in operation, all the time, money, energy invested to start. We have a lot of women here who are just getting licenses awarded to them in Maryland. And essentially my talk to them was like, yes, be optimistic, which I am. Go hard, build your business, but also be realistic.
Exactly.
Live in reality of what it's actually going to take. Live in reality of the capital need, the build out need, your hiring need. If you don't need to build out a 50,000 square foot facility to launch cultivation at first, and you can start off with a 4,000 square foot canopy, do that first, right? Incremental scale, because I say to myself, everyone should just position it for themselves if or when policy changes, because it really will unlock. I just had this talk upstairs and everybody was in agreement. Yes, it is a hope or maybe even a pipe dream. But the minute something cracks, even something that's deregulating banking, a lot of us are going to be in a really good place.
Exactly. And I think that that's a perfect place to end on a hopeful note, right? In this industry of all industries. So Precious, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I really appreciate it. Cheers. So, all right, friend, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Surviving convention life.
You're surviving the cannabis industry too, right?
Yes,
so it's like,
we're winning,
a little bit of both. We're winning on our own timeline, pace, scale, everything.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So so very, very happy to be here from MJ Unpacked, right? But, now for Entrepreneur, with my friend Corey Bix, who I can say is legitimately the only opera singer that I have met in the cannabis industry. So dude, it's always a pleasure to see you. You are someone I consider a friend. He was concerned that I wasn't alive when my phone shut down for a couple of days. Nothing says caring, being just genuinely happy. When I finally responded to be like, you're alive.
Wait, you are actually existing.
You're alive. You're still in existence. Yeah. So what do you think, what have you learned walking around here that you find, interesting? And, what have you learned in your journey in cannabis?
I mean, as you said, I'm an opera singer, so my journey to cannabis is weird.
Yeah.
Not really normal. But I think what's really great is, we see each other at so many conventions to pop around to these different markets and really soak in, like as a performer, you go to different cities, you soak in how different vibes treat the opera industry or the performing industry. Yeah. And cannabis is not different than that. So you go to Missouri, the market's different than Illinois, where I started in the market. The market's different than New Jersey. Different than the growing market in New York. So it's interesting to be in a state like Missouri now, where cannabis is thriving in a very big way. They're opening new small micro business licenses, which is a weird amalgam of different things. Exactly. It's pretty cool. But also just to see that in a place like Missouri, which is, I'm from Iowa, so it's not.
So he's allowed to say what he's about to say.
I'm not reading the state of Missouri, but in a fairly conservative state, that the cannabis industry can thrive
100%
so well and really grow and help so many people. And you see so many successful companies.
I think that it's, it's a microcosm of letting us know how things can, play out. And, as they like to say, conservatives and Republicans, conservatives and Democrats, everybody from every aisle, everyone smokes. There's a reason why it's a 70% approval. And I think that, one friend that said something very perceptive was, I wish that there was some way that there was a national referendum, right? That people could do what they do on the state level, because then we would have almost a super majority.
Well, being from Iowa, I'm from Southern Iowa. So so many people from my hometown drive the 20 miles to the dispensary that's closest to there, and they're consuming.
Exactly.
They just happen to live in a state where
no, the fact is that there are people who will travel 4 hours to get to a dispensary, stock up as best as they can, and then head all the way back home because they're providing for their friends and family, right? Yeah. It makes sense.
It's absolutely wild
to invest that amount of time, and that's crazy to me, right? And that's why you think that the legacy market can always, thrive while there's that impediment, right? When you're going as far to buy weed as you are to get an abortion, right? Yeah, you would think that it would appeal to conservative, principles of thought to say, leave it to the states.
Yep. I mean, when people are driving from Kentucky and Tennessee to Illinois to buy cannabis or to Missouri to buy cannabis.
Yeah.
Weird.
I might have to edit that moment out, by the way. Or do I just run with it? I run with it.
You can run with it.
I only say my truth, and my truth is sometimes I say offensive things. I'm sorry.
No. I fully support the comment.
Okay. Yeah. Figure we see eye to eye.
Yeah,
it's a raw day that we're recording too.
It's a very raw day. I can't say it's a very hopeful day. It's a hopeful day for cannabis, though.
It's a hopeful day for cannabis outside of Florida.
Yeah. Yeah, we won't throw that in there. I mean, the energy in the room here is good.
Oh, no, the energy in the room here is excellent. That's what I'll always be happy about. Like I said, like when I was facing the prospect, not being able to walk here, right? I realize that some of the things I miss more than anything are going camping with my buddies, or we, do our hard factory resets.
Yes.
Right. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
And you could relate, versus, it just, and the second thing that I realized I was going to miss more than anything were going to be these conferences. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate the people here. And I appreciate the people here.
Yeah. I think, I think one of the things you learn in the cannabis industry, we're both not people that come from like the MSO life. We're
pure pop people.
Yeah. We're pure, we come through it in weird ways and we got here. But, one of the best part is that there are so many good people in the industry, and when you can go to every convention and know that you're going to see, probably 40 people that you genuinely
really
want
to
see them.
I know.
It's
how do you not value that?
Yeah. I mean, when you're like sitting at the bar, hanging out before a convention and somebody, you're like, wait, I usually only see you in Ohio, or I see you in California. They show up, and it's, it's the nice part that there's actually a cannabis community.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad that you're part of my cannabis.
Yes.
In fact, I'm actually wearing something that says Unity in Cannabis Community. MJ Unpacked.
Oh, no. I did not.
Spirit fingers? Spirit fingers?
Yes, bring it. Or not bring it on.
Yeah, bring it on. Bring it on. Oh, yeah.
I wanted to
bring it on reference is a good reference.
I wanted to do a Pitch Perfect.
But, Pitch Perfect.
But that would include.
Are you Aka serious?
I know. Aka, excuse me?
Excuse me. There you go. Yeah, so long as we don't do any of the projectile vomiting, right? Or doing snow angels in projectile.
But that's also in that movie Triangle of Sadness, which is a really good movie. You need to watch it.
But projectile vomiting, or
it's more.
Oh, okay, explore
projectile everything.
Ew.
But it is actually a wonderful.
What man? Projectile everything.
You've not seen that movie?
I have not seen that movie.
You should watch it.
Thank you, Prince.
Good to see.
Welcome to another one-hitter, little episode of the Highly Enlightened podcast syndicated by Jon Purow, recording at the awesome WomenGrow conference here in 2025 in beautiful Inner Harbor, Maryland. And I have the pleasure of sitting down here with a dear friend, and the oldest of the OGs, the oldest of the OGs in this industry, Tawnie Scarborough. So thank you for sitting down.
I don't think I'm that old, but
no, not. I mean, we're talking about the cannabis industry here, right? Where every year is essentially like, 5 years, right? We come in, we see each other at a conference, and then the next year we see him as like early Barack Obama presidency, late Barack Obama presidency. In terms
20% more gray.
Right, exactly. Right, every single year. So Tawnie is not old. She has just been in this industry. She's an established player in this industry for many, many years. Thank you for joining the pod.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jon.
Yeah. So now I want to ask you, being at this wonderful conference, or, as I like to do in general, what is something that you're finding very surprising or interesting in the industry right now?
I think WomenGrow conference here in Maryland what's really struck me over the last 2 days is the kind of meta cycle of the cannabis industry at its state by state level, and to be in a state that it's still young, emerging industry, and to see all those bright eyes and hopeful, and big imagination, the limitless possibilities of new business. And to hold that in comparison to the experiences that I have working with other markets coming from the California market, where we've gone through that phase several times, and it feels like the California market is the survivors today are community driven. They may have seen each other as competitors. They deeply understand the value of collaboration. So all of the lessons that are being shared at WomenGrow over the last 2 days in panel after panel, they're motivational and aspirational bullet points that are being communicated that we hope stick for new business, that all new business has to go through this cycle to actually own it and survive as a community. But at the end of the day, the cannabis industry was a community. And commerce made it collaboratively competitive. And then legalization brought in a whole new level of business dynamics that shattered many communities that had thriving cannabis ecosystems. And it's that rebuild that brings us all back together. So in Maryland, I hope that this resurgence of WomenGrow and the women coming from across the nation, those who have been in for 10 plus years and those who are showing up for the very first time, interested in bringing their tools and skills to a table, that there's an opportunity to reduce that negative impact cycle by having more wiser women at the table, helping
from mature markets,
helping facilitate and prevent a lot of those challenges with that natural talent in community building and thinking ahead and road mapping.
No. I think it makes a ton of sense what you're saying, right? Is that, and we look at this on the regulatory side, right? When we say, hey, regulators, why don't you learn from the mistakes of other states, right? And the other thing is, hey, new businesses, in your state, learn from the mistakes of businesses from other states. And so I thought that it was very, very interesting. Some of the sessions that I did sit in yesterday, where they were operators from other states, and they said, we're trying to I think foster the community, right? Because I think that there is a lot, women need to help, rising tide lifts all ships, or as I like to say, rising high lifts all hits. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. That there's that collaborative community, but also this effort to impart education to people to not make the same mistakes. So I think that was, like you, I think that was a pretty large takeaway for me yesterday.
And yet we are humans, and we shall repeat the mistakes of our predecessors again and again and again, no matter how well history is recorded. We are human, and there is a certain need for all of us to live the lives we're going to live, make the choices, experience the consequences.
It's one thing to hear something; it's another thing to live it, as I understand, right? Absolutely. Like, the example that pops in my mind, obviously, because it's top of mind, is right. It's one thing for me to say YOLO and I like a Drake song and I mean something. It's another thing to break my freaking back and then to say to myself, you only live once after that. Right. And so like, there is just something that we, have to learn from our own experiences, but we can at least try to impart wisdom to, different folks.
I agree. And so that's my big takeaway from WomenGrow this year is seeing this resurgence. Shonda has done an amazing job of bringing the community together there was adversity and a huge challenge, and the women showed up and they rallied together. So it's inspiring to know that despite the ever-changing environment that cannabis industry, consumers, and America at large is going through, we continue to maintain the human connection. And as a friend out there in the community, Eric Metz, says, we all just need to smoke weed together, because it turns out it drops the walls and helps bring us all closer together.
A mutual friend and a very, very good guy right there. No, I agree with that, right? I mean, that is part of the value of the conferences, right? That you can't make up for the fact that you're, sit and you smoke with someone and you bond, right? Because, I mean, you were kind of referring to it before, is that there is something essentially collaborative and like a community in smoking. Right? Like it is built in, ingrained, it is puff, puff, pass.
Yes.
Right? That is just part of it. No. Right? And it's a social.
And we won't judge if you just puff a little bit.
Yeah. That's
you
fine.
Don't have to hit it.
You could do.
We don't mind.
What do we call it? What do they call it when like you pretend to drink? It's like an actor sip or something. It's just in your mouth. You could just puff it, put it in your mouth, and just, not inhale it and exhale. And most of nobody's going to notice. Right? But just at least join us for that process.
Or you don't have to imbibe. I mean, I think that's something that the alcohol industry is grappling with right now, and it's giving a lot of room for the non-alcoholic market and for the hemp beverage market right now. Is people want to get together socially and they want to share in something.
Yep.
And I think especially in America, we lack ritual. It's such a diverse nation, but it's also in a way culturally a nation of orphans. And so we're trying to find these common ground places, which have for decades been alcohol.
Yep.
And people are making healthier choices. Maybe it's smoking a joint, maybe it's having a weed drink, maybe it's just having a soda. But it is getting together. And one of the things that, if I could impart any life lessons from the last 20 years in this industry, is being willing to have the difficult conversations, being willing to face that sweaty palmed introduction for the first time, or even what might be a conflict conversation, approaching it, even if you're a little bit uncomfortable, because it's your fear of conflict, it's your fear of the unknown that's actually the biggest challenge you have. And you push through that awkward first 30 seconds, and what you get back is so much more richer. In this industry right now, after COVID, so many people have retreated into online communication, and we must come together as humans. Actually breathe the same air.
Agree.
Make eye contact.
Breathe the same air, hoping that there's no pandemic in it. No, but
real time eyeball contact and awkward conversations that don't always complete themselves don't get into your head. And the thing that does happen in the weed industry, you smoke a little, you have a conversation, it doesn't happen right.
Yep.
Keep going.
Yeah, exactly. Just break through that wall. Right, that weed wall, in order to get to know each other.
Yeah, never be afraid to say, "Oh, I'm too high right now."
Yes,
we will just rally around you.
Never be afraid to say, "I'm good." So, Tawnie, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Hey there. Welcome to another one-hitter episode of Highly Enlightened, syndicated by Jon Purow. I'm here with Amna Shamim.
Yes.
I got it.
You got it.
Nailed it. Sorry. So very, very happy to be here with you, meet you in person after, admiring each other on LinkedIn, I think, for a time. And so, we're here at the wonderful WomenGrow conference. And so just wanted to ask you, I'm giving you a choose your own adventure, right? So you can either talk about something really fascinating, interesting, surprising that you learned at this conference, or, as I like to typically ask my guests, something that you find interesting in the industry overall in your experience. Choose your own adventure.
I'm choosing the second one.
Okay.
And one of the things I find most surprising in the industry is we talk a lot about collaboration and growing together, and then we don't do it.
Yeah.
So the number of brands, because for context, if you don't know me, I run content at the cannabis community, and I do a lot of consulting work with businesses that are expanding either geographically or demographically.
Yep.
And we talk this big game about growing together and growing the industry together, and then we don't do it.
Okay.
So we need to learn lessons from each other. We need to leverage each other. We need to partner with each other. And there's this, people are starting to talk, instead of competition, and now I'm going to say the word wrong, but it's like being more cooperative, collaborative.
Oh yeah. I heard this recently too. Oh, we're co-competitors.
No, but it was collaborative. I'm screwing up the word. I'm sorry. But the idea behind it is true. I operate on a rising tide policy.
Yep.
And we cannot succeed on an island.
Yes.
And I mean this not just as an individual business, but as industries in different states in the US and different countries.
Yeah.
So we need to be communicating, unless it's your USP that is your secret sauce for your business, like share data, share insights, share experiences, share lessons.
Yeah.
Like having other people learn things the hard way is not helping us.
Yeah. So how do you implement that? Right. So, I mean, obviously at a conference like this is a place where we share knowledge with each other. Any other, like, you talk about the cannabis community. What are other ways to open up these types of collaborations?
Okay. So this is self-promotion. Sorry, incoming. But I started a project just in December and it's cannabisevents.global. It is a website that lists all of the cannabis events, and I'm going to be adding psychedelics events because still plant touching, relevant, different plants, but hey, because we were all having to do all of this research on our own, and we do not have enough time.
I talk about a resource that I think is very, very needed for the industry, and that I personally would appreciate. Yes, I know where I'll be going later to plan my itinerary for the next couple months. But
it's little things like that where it's a little bit of time, a little bit of money for me to host it and plugins and whatever. But it's taken, I don't even know how many hours for me to pull all that together, but I needed to do that to plan my year.
Yeah.
So if hundreds or thousands of people are doing this, that is a waste of energy and effort in the industry.
100%.
So it can be that, it's a little website. It's not a big project. It's not a big lift, but if we start doing this for each other, the amount of time and bandwidth we can free up in order to move the industry forward is huge.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because when you talk about collaboration, I think about this as such a collaborative industry because one, we have something so strong in common with all of each other. And two, because of the, idiosyncratic nature of the industry, you need to have a partner in a different state if you're going to bring your brand. Our industry requires collaboration, but it's funny that I don't think about in terms of pooled resources and education and learning from this, like how something as simple as that in terms of the website can be like Jason's highlights, right? Jason Raposo has his newsletter where he talks about certain events. Like I look at that thing religiously because one person took a little bit of effort to be a hub for that. And so, thank you for your service to the industry.
And his email newsletter is fabulous, but I'm operating internationally, so it's limited, and I need to plan 6 months out because I'm maybe TMI, but I'm based out of Malta right now. And I will be based somewhere else possibly by the time this comes out because I'm in the process of moving. But this being here was the grounding point for a 5-week trip that involves multiple countries for me.
Yeah.
So I flew across the ocean and I was in New York and then I was in Philly in time for the Eagles Parade, which was fabulous for me.
Are you being sarcastic or not? Or
no.
Just to watch it was amazing?
It just being in that energy was actually amazing.
No.
I have Philly ties to Philly, so that was very exciting.
Okay.
And then came down here and I'm flying internationally again tomorrow and bouncing back and forth. So there's a lot of movement. If I had found out about this conference 2 weeks ago, which has happened before, I've missed MJ Biz because I didn't realize the dates and was in Thailand. And I'm like, well, at this point, so being able to plan further out. And if you're a business and you're trying to pitch a conference to your CEO and justifying why you need to go, having an understanding months out, especially if it involves international flights.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to like brainstorm a little about different manners of collaboration and resources that we could put out there. I mean, I always talk about like this certification marks and ways of, signifying to different people that this is a women-owned business, right? Speaking here, WomenGrow, I think it's very, very important. Obviously, we're trying to raise women up in the industry. disproportionate level of, disproportionately low in terms of C-suite executives for one thing in this industry versus, well, every single industry needs to improve in this regard when it comes down to it, but we're trying to be a little bit more, I just think that these ideas, of unifying and knowing who even certain subsets of the industry are is beneficial in terms of accomplishing the goals of the industry to raise up certain populations.
Well, and I have this running argument with a very large brand that I will not name. You're welcome, because if you see this, it's you. Where I've been arguing with them since last ICBC about why are there no women in any decision-making roles in your company? It's a huge brand. If I said the name, you would know it. And their argument is it's a supply chain issue. I'm like, it's not a supply chain issue. I can give you 30 women for any role who are standout people for that role just from my personal network. And I am not even a super connector. So the fact that I know those women and different minority groups, like, you're just not looking.
No. I agree. I mean, there's I think a certain aspect of this industry that is a little bit broy.
Oh yeah.
Right.
That's an understatement.
I mean, like, we're going from the times of like MedMen and stuff, right? Where, I mean, you had like an incredibly, from what I understand, bro culture, way back when, right? With the founders and everything. And, no, we're trying to move past this. So and I appreciate your taking the time to sit down with me.
No, and there are great guys in the industry. You are one of them.
Thank you.
Like, we can't have events like WomenGrow without acknowledging and bringing in our allies, because at the end of the day, a white presenting male is someone that other dudes are going to listen to. And I specifically said dudes and not men are going to listen to in a way they're not going to listen to me.
No, this is why I'm here. So I greatly appreciate that. All right. And thank you for your service to the industry.
Thank you. Well, thank you for yours.
Welcome to another one-hitter episode of Highly Enlightened, syndicated by Entrepreneur. I'm here with a new in-person friend, right? But a long-standing online friend with Tor Hammer here. So please introduce yourself to the audience.
So, Tor Hammer, Managing Director of Brew Nexus. We specialize in importation of cannabis seed to home cultivation market. But I'm here in respect to a Maryland processor, Ed Wilkes Holdings, that has recently won a social equity license to process in Federalsburg and that Maine. Maryland, excuse me.
Got it. And so we are actually broadcasting from the one and only WomenGrow Leadership Conference here in 2025 in lovely DC, a little bit colder than a little light, but that just makes it more intimate. So Tor, I'm going to give you the opportunity to do a choose your own adventure. Right? Would you like to talk about something that you've learned at this wonderful conference, or something you've been exposed to, or something interesting, or you have the opportunity to just do that for, the overall industry? So choose your own adventure. Which way do you want to go? Think about this.
I'm going to go to the gossip column. I'm going to give my opinion on the Brittany Granger drama of yesterday and the impact it has on the WomenGrow's events, and how I think it's actually a good thing that this particular event happened or was resolved in the way it was, with everyone safe and healthy, and a little bit of extra media for the WomenGrow event.
Yeah, I think that there is something to be said in terms of there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? And as awful as, for the audience, I'm sure that, by the time you're seeing this, the story has, gotten out and gotten press coverage. But, when Brittany Griner showed up to her hotel room, there was on a piece of duct tape written the words, what was it? Gay, baby, jail. So kind of scary, but frankly, it makes me angry. It makes me want to, do something. The forces of evil are swirling right now, and I'm not going to sit idly by, and like watch this happen. I think that we, with all this anti-DEI stuff and everything, like we're taking a lot of hits very, very quickly. And I've had my head in the sand and no more. Something like that doesn't scare me. It makes me angry,
So I agree that in the context that you framed it, that if it was a targeted attack, it's absolutely unacceptable, and we should all be up in arms.
Yep.
But I want to put into context that this same hotel was hosting a Comic-Con the last 4 days.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, the whole thing was booked out with a whole bunch of alternative lifestyle folks, dressing up in, fancy outfits. And this could have not been a targeted attack. The knowledge of her being there specifically, right, is going to have, which indicates some level of sophistication or awareness of this individual being in this room at this time.
Which is why I think that, I immediately thought that it was like an inside job, that there's an employee, right? I mean, is there some chance that there's a, coincidental thing that someone left something that said that? It's, it's a tough call, right? Because it seems like targeted towards her, but is there some realm of possibility with the other events here that that's something that someone could have left behind? I guess so. Right.
Yeah. And I think that, expanding upon the impact of this event and the implications that it has for the WomenGrow trade show is, I would think, more important to focus on whether or not the individual, because the individual is safe. The individual made a conscious decision to remove herself and maintain her, her security.
Yeah.
But on the other side, this has given, specifically this type of event that is based upon women and empowerment in the cannabis space, a rallying cry to be able to make this a little bit more memorable.
Yeah.
You see a lot more engagement and from the members of the event and outside of the community, only going to help the notoriety of this particular trade show.
I agree.
And I think this negative message towards women.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's fair to say, right?
Yeah.
Jail. I mean, that's not a heterosexual attack, right? Or it was an inside joke. I think that is going to only bring more attention to this much needed, essential component to the cannabis space, which is the role women play in this industry.
Oh yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, knowing the stats for them on the podcast, I mean, they're underrepresented, in terms of leadership suites. But one of the presentations that I got to see yesterday that I really appreciated was, Luna Stour, friend, right? Both of our friend of basically everybody in the industry, right? She got up and she actually threw down stats that showed, that DEI and inclusion efforts, pay off in terms of the success of companies, right? And also when, choreographing that you are a women-owned business or a minority-owned business, that can impact sales positively, right? And so that was reassuring, especially in these times, right? That hopefully we are on the right track, right? Though there's a lot of, progress that needs to be made. And I mean, I've loved being here, right? There are two organizations I want to be involved in this industry that I need to move on: WomenGrow and the Minority Cannabis Business Association, right? And and it's been great being here and soaking up, and also just, seeing the community. And so I agree with you that like this very, very healthy, important community that's such an important facet of our industry, right? To get more attention in any variety is a good thing.
I would say any variety is a little broad for me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do agree with most of what you said, that the notoriety for women and the contribution is clearly evident based on the data.
Yeah.
And at the same time, though, I don't think anyone in the women's space or in the feminine side of the industry would want to be looked at as a handicap, looked at as a program, program. Because these are some righteous, wise women that I know. In fact, Jean Sullivan in her talk yesterday made a very elegant point: no crying in cannabis.
Yeah.
No crying cannabis. It comes from a league of their own.
Yep, I know.
Right. Tom Hanks said that. And, coming from such a pillar in the cannabis community, Jean Sullivan, right? We all know, we all respect, the effort and the diligence that women has put into the space.
Yep.
Her to say that after a Brittany Granger event like this, is so appropriate. Time, right?
Yeah.
That I think, we all need to respect that this is going to be a continued effort, and making sure that women have a voice in the community. It's not something that we as men can do. Right? It's something that they themselves are advocaatly chasing and defending. proving that they are correct based on the data.
Yep. No, 100%. I agree with that. I just, no, it's refreshing to be here. It is a long fight, but a worthwhile fight, and so hopefully we find ourselves on the other side, and have you found the conference, productive in terms of meeting people, to help with the business that you're working with right now?
So, Maryland's a really interesting opportunity, right? It's one of the most closed markets.
Please touch upon this because we were talking about it yesterday and I thought it was fascinating.
Most closed market in the country, right? You're talking about 172 licensed total, and 22 of those are cultivators, and 98 of them are dispensaries. They did $1 billion last year, $1 billion. And the next licensing round that occurred last year was all social equity. So there is a tremendous opportunity to be able to get new products into the market. There's only 98 brands now, 65 brands, and now it's the lowest in the country, tracked by Headset. And they have a trade policy that was issued by the MCA that strongly encourages that 25% of inventory must be bought from social equity product, social equity producer.
Which is, a fascinating, speaking from the perspective of covering all the different states in the podcast, that is brand new, right? As someone from the Maryland Office of Social Equity just walked by the way, who I was speaking with yesterday, and they were talking about how to build out that program, right? Because the issue is when you come up with something innovative like that out of the blue, you have to come up with standards. You have to figure out a way to enforce it. So it's unfortunately one of these things, I think, from the regulatory side where innovation is easier said than done, right? And also it's all the law of unintended consequences that we're going to see. But I just think it's a fascinating, New York thought it was doing all sorts of innovative stuff when it came to social equity. And really, unfortunately, it was handicapping a lot of people that I was trying to help, right? In terms of the construction of the system. So I'm very, very curious to see an innovative idea like that, how it ends up playing out.
So I think the idea of social equity has, since the first concept of it, back in early 2000s in California, and we want to get back to populations that really pay price to the world.
Exactly.
That concept is continuously evolving. In that evolution, we're seeing a lot of what you eloquently said, unintended consequences from a very righteous program, right?
Exactly.
And as different states adopt new innovative ways for this to be implemented, you're going to continue to have these backdrops. As a card holder myself in New York, I can tell you there has been, complete unnecessary amounts of hindrances and roadblocks that prevent the same people that are intended for these programs to support. But at the same time, it is better than what it was before. In Maryland, when they first did medical licenses, none of those folks were minorities. Right? There's one in Maryland. There's one lady in Maryland, actually she's here, right, that has been able to participate into the Maryland market.
Christine Johnson?
I think that's her. I'm not familiar with her personally. But the idea here is that when you have an over-regulated market that, has a bunch of complexities that no one understands, you have a bunch of individuals who are then thrown into these positions of seniority and having to run a new business that have the rules being changed and made up at the same time as they are doing them. And what's even more complicated is that there is no preparatory work. Right? So the folks that they go to rely on, these same folks, you and I, who've been in cannabis now for more than a decade, who've had ancillary businesses, from legal to import, are still figuring out this stuff. And when we go to advise new people, especially equity applicants who are entering into the market, we are learning as they are learning. It makes it incredibly difficult for it to happen. But the effort among regulatory bodies to be able to proposition the idea of equality and inclusion, I think that is the right conversation to have.
No. I think it also, I think that everything you're saying is right, because I think that at the same time, as you said, because it's a righteous fight, sometimes perfect is the enemy of good, right? And we need to keep on trying to advance, and it's not going to be neat at any, sometimes it's going to be messy as we figure out things that do work, right? Because to a certain extent, it's regulators throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks, and and things that conceptually seem like they could work. Right. And then figuring out, look, I just wish we lived in a world where all the states learned from other states. Right. And saw like what worked and didn't and implemented it rather than seeing the same mistakes made again and again. But I appreciate what you're saying. And I agree with you that you sold me on the idea that Maryland is a very, very interesting market going forward. So I just want to thank you for coming and joining for a one hitter like this, and it's a pleasure.
All right.
Cheers. Welcome to another one-hitter little episode of my Highly Enlightened podcast, syndicated by Jon Purow, right? I'm here with Ben Burstein, right? It's a pleasure to have you here, right?
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. You're with Leadway, correct? Right. Thank you for your service to the industry.
Right?
On it. Yeah. So now this was the first time that I've ever been able to articulate it like this, right? The question that I want to ask people during the one hitters, right? What have you learned in the industry that you think would be good for the industry?
One of the ideas at the end of this dialogue so much is the state-by-state dynamic creates an environment where many of the trials and tribulations that companies in newer markets like New York, New Jersey are going through have already been experienced by companies in many of the more mature markets like Colorado, California.
Yeah.
Learning the lessons that the patent those companies have already experienced are very important for your company.
I mean, that's the reason why I asked this question, right? And when I have to file my podcast, I file it as educational, right? Because we want to learn together as an industry. So I think that everything you said makes sense, right? In terms of the regulatory environments and learning from our peers who've been there. But it happens naturally in the industry, right? Because the problem that we're having with mature markets where they end up crashing 3 or 4 years in because of the supply risk and bottom of retail prices. We all know what I'm talking about, right? They're not really working to expand themselves where they can make some money. And so they find themselves in newer, typically eastern states. And so that wisdom isn't getting built in. Some of their resources and investments are coming in, and that's why for directed to me that you have residency requirements like a subclass cap investors and don't necessarily get out of the money in the way to get stored up.
I mean, there's firstly lots of they think a lot from the cell phone. The years, the lessons that operators the first is on price. The 3,035 pounds that is being used in series. Was probably not going to be here long, and and the cultivator, you have to be ready for a cost structure where you're really sell your flower or ready for $500. Number one. Number two is on stream performance at the dispensary level. Most stores need to properly stock products to serve their end consumers. 1% of purchase service is your market account for 20% of sales. People who purchase product every canister. They're the ones who make up the market. Knowing what those publishers like to buy is extremely important. They're refined quality product with a strong value prop.
But, strain profiles, you're looking, people are looking at live rosin in the vape and now in the edible category. And so they're just more specific, right? Because they've been doing it for longer. They know what they want more specifically. At the same time, that I feel like a lot of times they're open-minded to new things. Right? Variety is the spice of life. This is my favorite spice. My shown spice. That's the wordplay that happens. The weed wordplay that happens here is a pop hunter if you're with you. But so I mean, you don't notice play such an essential role in the industry, right? You lubricate the wheels of commerce.
No, 7,000 dispensaries every name option product from more than 3,000 brands. Most companies in the industry train that. We were so fortunate to help C4 all those operators of the variety of value-add treatments. We have logistics partners that will bring that product to retail partners that do orient. Factor transactions. We offer warrants of credit. We should do everything we possibly can to help the industry. We've acquired some wonderful businesses. So last 6 months. We brought on the influence for this meeting, providing in the space. We acquired a meat breed, which under complementary of different laws and the silvery ones, silvering vaccines.
Yeah, so that's pretty aggressive, bro.
I continue to evaluate new value add tools that will the brand customers and our retailers that transact.
We will just can't consume other companies, right? And so we're complete, right? Yeah, no, that sounds good. We like the board, the friendly.
No, we all want the space, we all want our customers, and we'll always after that support.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's, I think software ultimately in the world that we live in is such an essential component of what we do. And facilitate things. I would love to be in your position in the industry. I would wake up in the morning all like chipper and be like, we're going to help wake the wheels of dollars, churns, and I would take great satisfaction in that. So I appreciate you taking the time to tell me and chat about this stuff.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm walking them to you and everything you do. It was meet the one.
Yeah, go. Cheers. Welcome to another one-hitter episode of my Highly Enlightened podcast, syndicated by Jon Purow. I am your host, Jon Purow, and I have with me the awesome Sarah Transit Valley Wellness, a New Jersey OG. And because we just filmed without the microphones working, this is what I call radical hours. Worked after I said that. We just filmed without the microphones on us because it was my fault, right? And it was flowing. It was amazing. It would have been great. But now I feel like I'm more repeating some of the same thing. So I'm asking the same question, but we can't walk down that same place. But suffice to say, I always thank Sarah for her best service.
Well, thanks, Jon. I mean,
Right.
You are an OG as well. I have with the work that you allow us. This is like Arlington.
I appreciate that. No, I appreciate that. So we're going to ask you the question that I hadn't told you before I last recorded this podcast at least 5 minutes ago. So this one's a real shocker, a surprise. You have a good surprise things. Now will be the time to, bring it out. You don't have to go full screen for your house. So what would you say that you learned in the industry that would be good for the industry and somewhere?
That is a tough question because I really have to speak deeper in terms of how they can survive. Because if you don't win $1 million, it's a trash.
Yeah.
Right. So
you can spitball it. You can throw one stick.
Then I'm gonna tell you about the struggles that we had in the store that I've had and managing a store. Yeah. And I think that's where others.
Yeah, no, exactly. You're trying to have these whole avoid struggles, right? So frequently, it's a very honest thing to talk about. Right? It's not, you're not selling yourself when you're necessarily talking about vulnerable parts of your business, but that's the clearly most direct way to teach. All right. So we're saying all the self-improvement books I read, everything, like Jesse, those all of these, all of these, they all say, you learn from your failings. I always say it's not obvious series of learnings. So with that being said, make it feel comfortable.
With that being said, I was a lawyer. I am a lawyer, but I don't practice. So this cannabis industry was like never running a retail shop.
Yeah.
Never managing people.
Yeah.
Right? Never really being the boss.
Yeah.
Because I'd worked at the Legal Aid Society. So I was one of 1,000 lawyers.
Your boss were the people, and the people's good interest. All right.
So, we have almost 40 employees.
Yeah.
We can hide on the store.
Yeah.
And so managing all of the pieces of that is really a puzzle.
Yeah.
And it sounds
a full-time job. More than a full-time job.
More.
You're always juggling and you're saying, which of the balls am I currently dropping?
I like to call them buckets, right?
Buckets.
So and it goes back to when the dispensary was getting launched, right? You have the construction bucket.
Yeah.
You have the hiring bucket. You have the wholesale bucket. You have to move every piece like checkers.
Yeah.
I don't play chess.
I played chess when others played checkers, first of all.
I don't like chess.
Yeah, okay. No.
But you got to keep moving every button.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm kind of going all over the place. I did see what the struggles are.
Yeah.
People manage. Right.
Yeah.
I am not an HR person, but in a way, you have to become that HR person.
No, exactly.
Your people, right? The staff really is more family.
Yeah.
And so
exactly.
when something's going on with the family, with whoever it is, right? The mom, the parents, whoever it is, has to address them, has to help that person, has to help fix whatever is going on.
Yeah.
So that the people management and team, we all operate as a team. At Valley Wellness, we don't have one bartender still and you're behind the register. We're all working together. We're a fulfillment style model. We fill orders back, tips. Everybody has to.
love that.
Yeah. Everybody has to come together in order to make the machine work.
No. But look, it's a bunch of creating the right incentives, right? And so like that shows how are we growing to this is why I said whatever that's a choice that you make that impacts some more people.
And staff meeting that choice, John. We sat down at a staff meeting. How do you guys want to collect? We want you guys to make money. Given that this is the way that the dispensary runs in a fulfillment style model, how do you guys want Sims to operate? And then we took an anonymous vote. So really.
And then we fought to the death. The ones that survived the ganja gauntlet were able to be rewarded with votes. Paid from the salaries of the others. Sorry. I went on a sidebar.
No.
It just works out for everybody.
It does.
Yeah.
So other things we struggle with. It's kind of like strange.
And random logistical thing.
A random logistical thing that never actually I didn't understand. I interviewed during construction. We were, designing the interior. They interviewed some other operators, like, okay, what do you guys think about this layout? What's your feedback? Everybody told me you're gonna need more months. Like, okay, but I
move around and to extract stuff and like the speed with which you need to do it, you need to have a certain amount.
I mean, the vault is where everything has to go at the end of the night.
There'd be flow.
Yeah, and so when I have a cultivator that comes online and they're like, Sarah, we want you to buy this order minimum. I'm like, I would love, it's not about the money. I literally do not have space to be in 20 cases.
Yeah.
You want to hold 10 cases? Let me take that 10 right now. And then when I need the other 10 in 3 months from now.
Yeah.
But space.
It's like that drug dealer video game used to play on the advanced calculators, right? Where it's like random problems and coming out. This is where you can tell what's up or, what amount and what's server. It's basically you're just playing with specific limitations. And this always ultimately comes down to troubleshoots. So that's why it makes a lot of sense to have a team training. Then you're going to try and solve things. Reflect.
Another
parking in New Jersey, the most dense place, right? The most dense state in the country, ends up being a titanic issue. I mean, it's the reason that the huge issue in terms of getting approvals in a lot of different towns. It's a limiting factor.
Absolutely. It's a limiting factor when new retailers are coming on board, right? So we're trying to look for a psychologist right now. Trying to spam. I want to spam organically and not purchase the family that's we have something, we know how to upgrade it. I'm going to try and find a new location. Well, we're in this one particular town that I won't name right now, that is a newly opted town.
Oh, okay.
Newly opted.
Got it.
And like reviewing the ordinance, the 1,000 feet from parks, all of this. Well, this ordinance is also up to 1,000 feet from any residence. And 1,000 feet from any residential zone. So
here is how we logistically made it virtually impossible.
Not virtually, literally impossible. There is not a single location in that town. So they want the use. The town has zoned it out of existence.
Over Yeller it reserved.
So going back to the perk and challenge, like we said, that's populated and 23 spots here lost. Jared, but then not when we have to have 10 staff members on site to serve customers, right? So
you incentivize car fuelers. Why give me that bubble gum that they car fuelers?
My stuff parks off site, and I tax boxes. We taxi the staff over for the morning shift and the night shift for security.
Which half of the security?
So that all the morning crew walks in together and all the evening crew walks out together.
So you show up on time for that pussy and for your errors. Yeah.
We also, like, if it's raining or snowing or...
It's not a hard and fast, right? But this is just something logistically that you're like, okay, I'm going from being a lawyer to dealing with machine. I expect to spend most of my time working. Right.
What you really wouldn't expect that. When we first opened, there was no sidewalk from like a small strip. It was about 500 feet where no sidewalk existed.
Yeah.
So under our variance.
Yeah.
For a particular period of time until I installed that sidewalk.
Okay.
We actually had to bus all of the staff members from every single fit. So we had a taxi coming around 6 times a day to take our staff to and from the parking lot where they parked because safety for our staff walking out the sidewalk. So had to go and get that permit from the New Jersey Department of Transportation. We've locked up 202, Route 202. For 3 days with a crash tarp.
It's been real popular.
Valley Wild Wellness installed a brand new sidewalk on the side of Route 202. So
when
now
you were flying in traffic, did you say crossing by Valley Wild on the sign? They really like choose brand placements. Everybody's disappointed.
That sidewalk benefits the person.
No, of course.
Not just
the
mailman. The mailwoman actually was walking around this strip of
that sounds terrifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I would only cross something like that.
I could probably cross where Chick-fil-A is.
Right? Yeah, but it would be a Sunday. They decided to say no to really selfishly for the Lord. Sorry.
Probably on the other struggles and challenges.
But I think it would be very constructive.
The challenge isn't actually running from the dispensary.
Yeah.
The challenge is all of the other things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that what makes the successful versus an entrepreneur is rolling with the punches.
Totally.
Every day is an
Yep.
How are you going to solve this problem?
Exactly. Yep.
So without listening.
That's never underestimate that part of it, right? Mental health is at the core of physical health. The cannabis is physical temporal. Right.
Yesterday was one of those things. When I walked in the door in 6 o'clock, and I went to my husband, and I just wanted to hurt him.
Thank you for your radical honesty. He's been wearing you down. But it's upsetting to me when I hear about people actually leave the industry, right? Because it's just like, oh God, we lost like another one. Because it's just like, I understand to a certain extent sometimes, like, the things are going on at backward level. But it's like, glass half full. It's always. Right.
And I'm trying.
It's all a matter of perspective.
Thank you for saying that. For prior numbers, but to change and like trying to make the inside.
Yes. 100%. But thank you so much for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Cheers.
Thank you, Jon.
Welcome to another one-hitter episode of my podcast, Highly Enlightened, syndicated by Jon Purow. I am here with my dear friend, David Zellinger, the Cannabis major. We're here to talk about something, particularly interesting, a different matter, such as entirely, that we think will be very interesting for on-site consumption. So talk to me, show me, teach me. Sure. Thank you, Jon. I will go through and that's the title, one hitter. Yeah. This is kind of the ultimate one hitter. Okay, there you go. It's a way of sort of taking the concept of the one hitter from the dug out in the high school bathroom to something that we'd like to be a little more elegant. Yeah. And I think really it kind of bridge that gap between some share that as people do as part of their night out and consumption is something that one does and comes home, with their girlfriend's hair smelling like it once. Which past a certain point, apparently nobody likes. So apparently, no one likes it. So this is kind of the setup. And what I kind of say, like, anything from Mardi Gras to after dinner cognacs. And Jon tried both. And so now, one thing that's in here, and this is very near to, is if we put the camera back up on us, I got to do better with the camera work. Can I zoom out? Let's zoom out. No, I'm just butchering it right now. Yeah, we'll do it in post. So, but no, this version here is actually uninfused. Yeah, which means that we've done a neutral base with cannabis terpene, which for the first time allows people to legally sample cannabis product. Different streams, right? Anyway, factory and event. Yeah, so nothing in here is controlled. No DVD, no THC. So but let's try here. We've got the Granddaddy Perp. Yep. Wow. And that's about 10 cartridges there? It is. So there you go. There's some Granddaddy Perp. I'm going to follow New York style here. Have a cup of the sour diesel. Cheers. So, cheers. So you get the nice flavors, you get the terpenes, you're going to get to have that experience. No THC, no CBD. Great way of bridging the gap for customers, but yeah, for training staff. And for training staff. I could taste the flavors. Worse. Now, thing is, sometimes, you're out, you want a little bit, something a little, quick and easy. But for me, the real sort of killer app is glassware that you can get with it, which I think is, I'm not going to say that I like to start my day with an iced coffee topped with wine, bras, and paper, but I do.
Consider mind blown. Right, Don is supposed to sip from it?
You can sip from it. You can really just treat it like
It's yes. I didn't wait for you. Sorry. Rude. Bless. It's a rough life.
Now, I'm not suggesting doing that with tequila and single strain 6-star hash, but it's not the worst thing. He's not saying you shouldn't. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying I'm not your dad.
Wow.
The adults over the age of 21 are free to put whatever they want in the glass. But that's kind of the beauty of it.
Wait, I didn't actually drink it.
Do you drink? Absolutely.
This is tequila?
No, that's coffee. It's coffee.
Oh, I need a nice coffee so badly.
And that actually is kind of the big part of what we're doing here, is that while we love being able to offer the cannabis sampling and then to support the consumption environment, I see no reason not to get an espresso martini topped with a vapor that tastes like marshmallows and has a bit of caffeine or B12 in it.
Yeah. So you're serving different functions.
Right. So we're able to sort of bridge the gap and provide an experience for non-consumers as well. That's just as approachable, that lets them enjoy the same experience, the same feeling, without having to consume. Yeah. I think as an industry, if we don't figure out a way to bring in the non-consumer into a consumption environment, we're losing a significant consumer.
No, I agree. I think it just makes so much sense in different ways. And it's, I'm fascinated by innovative products. So, different form factors, anything like that has some form of competitive advantage over other consumption and I think this does. So that's why I find it particularly exciting.
The problem it's solved for in the dispensary world, especially.
Yes.
That's something that the spirits industry is solving, right? You go out to a liquor store, anything out there, there's wine, or that drives statistic in sales.
Yeah.
And none of this historically haven't been able to do that. And this, we're able to do that. They're able to capture that. Right. So dispensaries are able to, one, let people sample before they buy. Drive sales, try before you buy. Two, they're able to have all of these things available. When you can't get high, try before you buy. So one of the common reactions people get is, how can I do that at home? It's like, well, great. You just they just buy one. The dispensary has that as well. And then a marketing plan, right? So brands that want to deploy new products are able to do a tap takeover. Be the dispensary, provide the terpenes to us. We'll make the uninfused version for them. Yeah. And they can then legally sample their products during not one. Yeah. So instead of just having somebody stand there and hand out keychains, and actually have somebody try the products. Yes. And again, we're launching it up. We're seeing dispensaries in New York just the next couple of weeks. And it's really kind of a brand new thing. So first time here on the year for the birthday app. Have seen here first. Exactly. I butchered her. I apologize. It's okay. Yeah. This is uninfused. Imagine if it was infused. Imagine when I had this podcast. Exactly. Yeah. The church beam profile that just knocked me on my ass, apparently. But I thank you for coming on and teaching us about this. It's very, very exciting. And while you're here, just to ask you a common question, and that is, what is something that you've learned in the industry that you think would be good, right, for others in the industry to learn? That innovation is sometimes dealing with competition. Okay. It's, you see so often this race to the bottom in our space where everybody's trying to make the cheapest pre-roll, the cheapest 1 gram vape card. And we've sort of conditioned our marketplace to operate that way. But if we're able to bring more innovation and broaden the market, make the product more approachable to our community, we can all sort of, prosper together without racing to the bottom. And that's a big component of us how we approach the vape party. Got it. Agreed. 100%. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you very much. Pleasure. You're scholar. Vapor cheers. Oh, there you go. Oh my God. That's so freaking cool. Cheers. Bless this way. Take people watching this wouldn't even know I'm degenerate. No. But we are. Without a doubt. We're definitely degenerate. I call them DG. We are bathers DGs. Yeah, thank you, sir. Good night, John. We are on another little, episode Dito, a one-hitter on my Highly Enlightened podcast, syndicated by Gossip New York. So it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you. Since we like to do on our one-hitters, just curious to know something that you learned, right, in the industry. Could be today at the Congress. We're at the Benzinga Cannabis Market Spotlight in New Jersey. Something you learned at the conference or otherwise, and that you think you would do good for others to learn. So we recently expanded. We expanded to New Jersey. There's no one here native right now of Arizona. And one of the things that in experience when we were expanding, what we had to really kind of focus on was our ski portfolio. Yeah. And, in Arizona, we had, when I took over the company after my mom passed, we had about 30 students. Yeah. And so I knew that's too much. Yeah. How can at least you go to retail and say, carry all the sleeves. Yeah. So we had to go through a rationalization of our sleeves. And doing that, we had to really focus on defining exactly what you want. Or what all of our value proposition catering to as you winnowed it down based on data and the gut feeling. Exactly. I need to look at the market, looking at competitors, looking at them. Setting up surveys and just speak to consumers directly, find out what their specific needs, because you've got to always make sure you're satisfying them and really can talk to them. So we rationalize down because when the marketplace, we need to have a nice, simple, accessible speed portfolio that cater to different consumer needs. Yeah. We need to be able to convey that, communicate that, and fit it. Right, because when you go to the retailer, the first thing you say is how are different, how wide area. How is that going to be like? I had to take up half of your shelf space so you can have one of each of every single one of my products. Not an easy sell. Right, and they're already so it's competition, and that's just pretty bad. So they'll read up to every 30 seats. And so that was one of our big challenges, and we really depended on figuring out how to self-define us and making those choices. Because you really like something, you want to go a direction, and you're like, so you know what, that we can't go that direction. I have to let go of that. Yeah. So it's like editing. Something you're writing to hard stories. So you have to kind of kill your, dang darling. I love the click cannabis. It's exactly. It's part of the cannabis journey. Exactly. There you go. It's your rationalization. So that's one of the biggest flips I've learned in our own expansion. And I think that is how we focus up in subtitles. Making sure we have a fun portfolio. So when we go in there, we're sending some services. Got it. So now, one thing I want to, I love learning people's origins on this in the industry. And I think that it's important for you to share yours because I think that it's relatively unique and very valuable for that to your own guards. And that helps inform the perspectives that made that a learning experience for you. So tell me a little bit about the origin story. Issue number 0.
So my mom started the company. My mom was the first edible nice class in ours because she had a issue back in 2005. And this is pretty different. They're making all good stuff. Yeah. Custom stuff.
Custom.
Okay. It's like 2018. She got a small penetration lab. So she's multi-category.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ways. If you call it a Tawnie herself, she wasn't a brand builder. They still never so steady. And they went trying to figure out what was best to breed. The nice was best medicine.
Yeah.
One thing led to another. She got an answer. She moved on to Dallas. And gummies, she was like the gummies on the market. She felt like the edibles were ridiculously insane. It's a short moment of time. It wasn't until she experienced shooting for them without watering first.
Yeah.
That's kind of the origin of how they must know these gummies, this yummy, delicious gummy.
Yeah.
When I was at the for 10 years and I picked up a carry on to the legacy and expanded. But in 2020, she made a major decision to stop making all of the other categories. She was making tinctures, pre-rolls, white labeling, and go all the way on this gummy that started toward the other in 2000 Arizona.
Okay.
So again, more choices. Gummies, that's single category. They want to focus in single category. Multi-categories can be very challenging. And so
kind of manufacturing logistics perspective, everything always in stock, right?
Especially when you have an economy
if you're trying to expand, they're ultimately, caps in your capacity, right? And the stage that you could get to your thing on bringing. So, I understand. So really just focus it as much as possible and then execute. And like you said, your mother's one of my years in the industry.
High times of Victory when high times and stuff like that.
Yes, right. We come to interested where high time experience.
But I mean, back to that whole rationalizing student and both journeys and why even on board.
Yeah.
Was this realization of multi-category and trying to hit everything, but realizing one thing.
Yeah.
And following it accidentally. Yeah. And something that took off. And
I find it like, what popped in my head was necessity was your mother's invention, right? Like she couldn't find good gummies. Like I didn't say that perfect to Dakota going for it, right? That is a mother invention, and your mother's invention came out of necessity. And so I feel like that the early people in the industry, you hear that story more often.
Right? Access.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like the Congress starting, a couple starting to put, chocolates in their kitchen. They got one of the dominant everywhere. Terrible people with Christy Gone. They don't want to associate with her. Yeah, I call her the triple W, the most wicked woman in weed. No, I'm kidding. The warmest woman in weed. That was coded message for her. Yeah, there you go. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I wish you continued growth.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, cheers.